The Fantasmagorium show is proud to present Webs, Gliders, and Spiders, a show with not enough responsibility to require any power. Strike that, reverse it. Created in 1962, Spider Man represents the comic book renaissance and the Saturday morning cartoon set. That made sense when I wrote it. Stan Lee and Steve Ditko brought the world of gawky teenager Peter Parker to life, and Spider fans were delighted to see the motion picture in the 2000 Tickety Twos. Toby, Kirsten, Willem, J.K., Bill, Banks, Rosemary, and Bruce Campbell? Tonight we begin our Spider-Man journey with the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. My name is Scotty R37. Kat is riding a glider, and Steve wants pictures of Spider-Man. Tally ho. Hey, Kat, what's going on?
Not much. Fun to finally get to this series. It's been a while in the making.
It has been. Well, I know that you're a big fan of the Batman.
Yeah.
And I would venture that my passions lean more towards Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, that works. For me, Spider-Man's my second favorite to Batman as far as superheroes go.
And that's how I feel in the same reverse, in the photo negative. So I'm curious. When I was talking to a friend of the channel, Todd Michael, just before this show, and I was saying that I didn't really crash into Batman until 1989, 88, when I found out there was going to be a Batman movie. I didn't really get into the comics. I think I had a Batman and the Outsiders comic in 1985. And I was aware of it, but it really came to my attention when the movie came out. But with Spider-Man was on TV again. It was a Saturday morning cartoon for me. I was a big fan of Peter Parker. I liked that more than Batman, and I grew up with it, from the Electric Company to Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and again the '67. Big shout out to Ontario Canadian broadcaster CKVR. They just played it all the time, and that's where I fell in love with it. And when they finally, I wasn't a big fan of the '90s show, I'm sorry, but when they finally came out with a movie, I was just like, yes, let's see this. And I was so excited. And this was, to quote, this was my movie when it came out in 2002. When did you first encounter the Spider-Man?
I don't remember. I think it's just something I was kind of always aware of. I mean, I remember when the marketing for this movie was huge, and everybody was talking about this movie. I don't even think I saw this one in theaters, actually. I think I wanted to see it. It just didn't. I don't know why. Most of my free time was filled up at the time because I was selling stuff to try and finance a trip back east and didn't have much free time. But I think I probably was familiar with Spider-Man from all the merchandise there was. You go to the store, there'd be clothing, there'd be sweats, all that kind of stuff. Even though I never had any of it, never read any of the comics, had never seen any of the cartoons, and again, I'm pretty sure I didn't see this in a theater. Probably saw it at a friend's house down the street 20 odd years ago, maybe. I do remember a lot more about the lead up to the sequel, but this one kind of, I remember there being so much buzz about this movie and friends going crazy about it, but I just didn't get around to it. And my memories of eventually getting around to seeing it is that I wasn't that hot on it. And then I kind of softened on it after rewatching it a few years ago, and then I just watched it again today, and I kind of went down on it a little bit more. I kind of fluctuate back and forth with how I feel about this movie. I feel that at times that when you hear filmmakers bagging on comic book movies, this might be a perfect example of what they think it is. Because some of the stuff in this movie is a bit too cheesy and just too on the nose at times for me, and kind of takes me out of it a little bit. I think that the sequel, as I recall, the first sequel, of course, with Alfred Molina, I think was a lot better written and all that. This one just kind of, it feels like it's trying to check a bunch of boxes, and it's obviously a big deal because it's Spider-Man. It's a major character, and they're bringing him back to the big screen. I mean, I know there were previous attempts, but those were more like made for TV quality stuff. Whereas, this is a movie, and like a lot of people, I felt that Willem Dafoe was hampered by being in a Power Rangers outfit rather than just letting him be Willem Dafoe.
Well,
But
but the
that's kind of
alternative was there was going to be like an animatronic mask, which would have eliminated.
right. But in the comics, it's not really a mask. It's that he becomes like the serum has this effect on him, and it's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. Like he becomes like this monstrous goblin-like thing for however many hours it is, and then he eventually transforms back into Norman Osborn. Whereas in the movie, they decided to try, oh, we're going to do something that feels more grounded. But I mean, that's just my initial impressions of it. It's like, okay, it's Spider-Man facing off against a Power Rangers type guy. A great actor in the role, of course, Willem Dafoe. I remember I liked Tobey Maguire as a really nerdy Peter Parker, which at times is even nerdier than in some of the comic runs. But yeah, that's kind of my memories of the film.
Well, and
I'll go on more when we get into it.
the reason I think the day that Spider-Man opened, I said that I could go to a job interview at 11 a.m., but I had tickets to see the movie at like 1:30. I got the job, which is nice, but it was one of those things that I planned my life around it. And watching it again and again, as I have over the years, I think it perfectly captures the feeling of not only reading the comics, but also watching the movies, or sorry, watching the cartoons. The only thing that I regret is the lack of quippiness.
Yeah, it's like that old adage that they say Tobey Maguire's the best Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield's the best Spider-Man, and Tom Holland's the only one that's decent at both. And I agree with that because I do remember that Garfield was very quippy as stuff as when he's in his Spider-Man outfit a lot. Whereas
For sure.
this movie, Peter's just kind of understandably like really wowed by it because he's become Spider-Man for the first time, and so it's just kind of a lot of him going wow, like swinging through the through the cityscapes and that kind of thing.
I think it's rather masterful in terms of handling the character of Peter Parker, is that Peter Parker is the audience surrogate for the first little bit of the movie. As he discovers his powers, we discover them with him, and we're just as surprised. Narratively, it's a really fascinating tale of this movie. Is it like self-actualization? It is certainly a movie about identity.
Yeah.
And not only are like you have the Uncle Ben character who is sure of the good man who Peter Parker is going to become, with the sort of weighing of options that Peter himself has to deal with, as we see with the robbery of the wrestling match. It's just fantastic. I cannot say enough good about it. In fact, I may say too much.
Okay.
There's a level of excitement and in this movie in terms of the joy of discovering who Spider-Man is, who Peter Parker is, but that same joy of discovery is something that I think is only second to the original Donner Superman.
Mm.
Do you think do you think I'm putting the bar too high?
Well, I've never finished Dick Donner's Superman. I watched it up until the scene when Lex Luthor kicks kicks Superman into the pool of kryptonite, and then I had to go to work.
Okay.
And up to then, I just thought the movie was really stale. It's like, it's just not for me. And so I never got around to finishing it. I should one of these days because they're all on Max, and I got that. So
But you did finish Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, I like Spider-Man a lot more.
So you're saying that Spider-Man is better than Superman?
Well, the movie I liked a lot more.
Fair enough.
And I like the character of Spider-Man a lot more. Like I mentioned, Batman's my number one, and then Spider-Man's my number two.
What is it that appeals you to Spider-Man?
He's like a regular kid, and it's more about him and his life as Peter Parker, and then there's the Spider-Man stuff that kind of gets in the way of things, and that kind of, that whole deal. Like, it's not some supernatural, yeah, there's sometimes supernatural sci-fi stuff in Spider-Man, of course, but that's not the primary emphasis of it. He's not some reclusive billionaire. It's not like a bunch of mutants like X-Men. It's not trying to be a parallel for anything. It's just, here's a kid, here's his life, and here's his problems, and that's kind of what this story is about.
And when it comes to the cast, you said that you enjoyed Tobey Maguire. I absolutely like. It's kind of weird. In the special effects, they sort of do the same thing that they did in Captain America, where they skinnied him up.
I didn't notice.
Well, there's a moment when after Peter gets bitten by the spider, he's looking in his mirror and he's a skinny dude. He's a skinny teenager. And then he does the whole falling asleep and whatnot.
Like, I remember that. I just meant I didn't know if that was like a visual effects thing, or maybe they shot that part first and then he beefed up later for the rest of it, or what.
From what I understand, that was a visual effect. They did not wait for Tobey Maguire to learn how to lift. Which is one of the things about Marvel superheroes. Like, it's usually their superpowers are like, all right, you're a weakling. Here you go. Here, you're a superpower now.
Yeah.
Which is a different thing, again, which speaks to the great power and great responsibility when you find greatness thrust upon you.
Yeah.
The again, you mentioned the hype coming up to this. This has one of the most famous teaser trailers in history.
Yeah,
I remember seeing the trailer. It was from the summer of 2001, and ultimately, it was filmed by Sam Raimi to celebrate all things Spider-Man. Come see this movie, or directed, not filmed, but directed by Sam Raimi, and it culminates after Scorpion, Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Spider-Man. It almost looks like the beginning of a Marvel version of the Dark Knight heist. And at the end of it, Spider-Man catches a helicopter with his webs between the World Trade Center towers. And that was, subsequently pulled because of events in 2001. There is a very... I'm sorry?
They should have left it in there if it looked that good. I seem to recall what you're talking about now.
Well, and there was a certain level of cultural sensitivity that I do agree with. But the poster became one of the most sought after collector's items simply because it was a one sheet that was basically Spider-Man peering around a corner, and the World Trade Center is in one of his reflective eyes. And that is that's a poster that if you have it, I'm envious. I don't know if it's that controversial anymore, but I remember going to a comic book convention in like 2000 and I'm going to say 12 and seeing it for like $100. Like, it's one of those one sheets that is, ooh, you have one of those. It even gives you cred as a Spider-Man fan. So that was big in terms of the marketing. Having Sam Raimi, this is arguably one of his biggest, he had proven himself as a director, doing For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner. He had done, oh, what was that one with Bill Paxton and Bridget Nielsen? Not Bridget Nielsen, Bridget Fonda. It's got, anyway, he had finally cut his teeth to be a blockbuster director, and this was representative of that. It really is as you said, a fantastic love letter, but also made by people who were really trying to bring it to the big screen for the first time and doing it properly so that it showed off the heart of the story. Pardon me. When you watch the 4K, I'm assuming you have the 4K.
I actually never upgraded any of these films from my standard DVDs.
So you're a big fan.
No, I mean, they never really advertised when they came out on Blu-ray 4K. They just kind of came and went. But I do have the 4K digital copies, which I was unable to watch because I don't have a 4K TV downstairs. But yeah, I watched them. What about them now?
Well, I was. If you never had the opportunity, you are my 4K guru. So when you have the opportunity to actually watch these things, I wanted to see how the upgrade had been technologically.
I remember when I watched them back in December, it didn't seem like it was a huge upgrade so much as it looked as good as the DVDs did back on my old small TV back in the day. But just because now it's on a super 4K size screen, so it's reformatted and it doesn't. It's not like fuzzy like a DVD would be if you watched it on that type of big screen. So, but it still looks as good. Kind of the same way I felt about the 4K transfers of the Lord of the Rings trilogy for the most part, save for a couple color timing changes. It's like, oh, people talk about how good these things are, and it's like, well, to me, it looks just as good as it did when I used to watch it on my small, like 32-inch Zenith, one long time ago, tube TVs, So yeah, they look fine.
And like I got to see it on the Blu-ray. I have I got the Blu-ray trilogy, and this is the first time. Not really great packaging, but I enjoy it in terms of the content. And it looks good. Like it does still hold up in terms of the technology that is presented on screen and in terms of the presentation. I don't know the technical specifics, but I am a fan of. I don't know, where do you stream it? It's a Sony thing.
I own a digital copy. I have lots of digital. I have like a collection of over 1,500 digital films that I own.
No, I understand.
Yes. Movies anywhere. So I didn't go to a streaming service, if that's what you mean.
Oh no, I was just curious about the nature of your viewing process, and you have seen them in theaters, like this one specifically.
No, like I said, I don't think I saw this one in theaters.
Boo! Any of them?
I did. I have no memory of it. I remember the hype that was surrounding it when it came out, and other people wanting to see it, but I don't remember if I saw. I don't think I saw it in theaters, but.
Well, you're not going to like my story for next week. My Spider-Man 2 story is. Anyway, I did want to say, just over in the chat, I wanted to say hello to Cinema Gulp. Ben, hey, the human spider? Man, that sucks.
That's right. Yes, that's the Bruce Campbell character.
And Lemon. Hey, Scotty. And Empire of Time. Edge of Time says, I blame the fans. Don't we all? And Ben does. Sorry?
Blame the fans for what?
I don't know. Why not? It's easy. Just blame the fans. And then Cinema Gulp, thank you for filling in my knowledge. Sam Raimi directed A Simple Plan with, it was Bill Paxton.
Oh yes, Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton, and some
Bridget
third guy who
Fonda.
was maybe she was in it. I don't remember.
Oliver Platt. And Black Philip Alvarez says, I saw it in theaters and it was huge. The theater was packed. Yeah, man. It's good to see you, Phil. Well, Kat, I was going to make here. We have to have a little bit of a staff meeting in the middle of this because this is much more my jam. Would you prefer it if I made slides for the Spider-Man going forward? Or would you care to recap without slides?
You can recap with slides if you want. Sure.
Okay, we'll do that next week. Do you want to recap Spider-Man?
Okay, so let's see. This film begins with Peter and his class going to a field trip at some I can't even remember where it is, some science museum or whatnot. And
Yep,
Harry gets dropped off by his dad in this car, in this fancy car. And he's saying, "Dad, can you park a little ways down the way? I don't want him to see, where I'm at, that I'm with you." And he's like, "You shouldn't be embarrassed of where you come from, blah, blah, blah." And you can tell they don't really have the best relationship. And he gets out of the car, and Harry catches up with Peter, and he left his backpack in the car. So Norman runs up to give it back to him. And you can see immediately just how enamored Norman is with Peter because he's heard a lot about him. And you have the great line, I'm something of a scientist myself from Norman. And you get that there's a tinge of resentment there from Harry because Harry's just kind of watching how Peter and his dad are just hitting it off. And he's just not really expecting that one as much. So they go inside the museum. Yeah.
So we have Norman Osborn and we have Harry Osborn. Harry played by the late great James Franco. I heard he died.
I didn't hear that.
No, that's what I heard. Well, maybe not him. Maybe just his career. I've heard that he's had trouble.
I don't know why you're bringing that up on a Spider-Man stream, but okay.
Well, James Franco was in Spider-Man.
Right, but there's no reason to bring up all that other shit that has nothing to do with the movie.
Well, no, I'm also saying that I really enjoy James Franco.
Yeah.
As Harry Osborn in this movie.
I don't. He just
You don't like him?
No,
do we even have to do a recap of this movie? I can do a recap super quick and we can just talk about the peripherals.
If you want to do that, we can, if you prefer it.
Well, it's up to you. You're my co-host. I don't want to mess up your Cabbage Patch.
You're obviously super jazzed, so go for it.
Okay, so we start the movie. Peter Parker, you want to know who I am? The tale of my life. And there's a little bit of narration at the beginning, but it's bookended at the end. Everything's fine. So they start off, and Peter Parker is shown chasing after a bus because he sucks. And then who is Peter Parker? Well, he's the guy no one wants to sit with. And he's pretty terrible. No one knows him, and he's always been sort of sheepish and reclusive. We get to see Joe Manganiello. Is that how you pronounce his name? The gentleman who plays Deathstroke?
Maybe. I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly.
Can we just call him Joe?
Yeah, just call him Joe.
All right. So he plays Flash Thompson. He's like a rival, not a rival, more like a high school bully. And we get to see Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, and Joe Manganiello. Sorry, Joe. Being Flash Thompson. No best friends. Like, we don't get the same thing. We're looking back on this movie. There's no Ned.
Yeah.
So Peter Parker sucks. They're going on a field trip. We're introduced to James Franco, and you'll remember him. And he plays the son of Willem Dafoe, who is Norman Osborn, who is incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
Every time he is not wearing a helmet, he is the best. Right?
Yeah.
Right. I enjoy, you know what? I enjoy it when you yawn.
Okay.
So it means that I'm doing a good job at telling this story. So anyway, we established that Harry's a little bit embarrassed of his wealth, but we also learn that Norman is rather impressed with that their Peter Parker boy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he's brilliant. He's scientist.
Yeah.
You know, Norman Osborn considers himself to be a bit of a scientist himself,
Yeah, sir.
as we discover. Also, we didn't bring up Marvel at all. This is such a crazy, because Norman Osborn is essentially attempting to create a super soldier serum.
Yeah.
Drives him crazy.
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
It's kind of funny that all the other scientists on the project are in agreement with Osborn, but there's only the one lone holdout who the general listens to. And it's like, how many people did he have to bribe to say, "Oh yeah, it's great," when it's clearly not?
well, and also, like, now that you bring up Dr. Strom, it's like one of the most memed things about this is like back to formula. Like this is a very memed movie. Anyway, so Peter is going to, I think it's Empire State University, maybe not. And maybe it's Columbia University, I'm not sure. And they're going to go do like a tour of the laboratory, and we're taking pictures because that's what Peter does. He's a photographer for the school paper. I like that establishment of his sort of all of the things that this is a movie of setups and payoffs, and I think it all works very, very well. So we get Peter as a photographer for the school paper, and there's a little bit of a rivalry between Harry and Peter in terms of what's going to be happening with Mary Jane. Are you going to ask her out? Because you should. And if you don't, I will. Between Harry and Peter, and then Harry does, which is a nice parallel from the origins of the comic. But there is a moment where we are introduced to 12 genetically enhanced super spiders.
15.
This, my mistake. This is a leftover. This is a leftover because I think we would be remiss, and I'm sorry that it took us this long, but like there was originally going to be a Canon Films James Cameron Spider-Man movie, potentially starring that there DiCaprio man.
Oh, okay.
And so there was a pass that was done, which included the biological web shooters, that it was like, okay, we don't want to have to explain how Peter Parker made his own web shooters. That seems excessive for a boy in high school to do. No one remembers Pump Up the Volume, where there's a young man who makes a pirate radio station, but web shooters, too far. So they do that. Like there was a whole thing. I would highly recommend it, and it's too much to get into now. But there was a James Cameron pass at a Spider-Man movie that was never made because of studios and financial losses. I am not an economist. Oh my God, I love it when people yawn and rub their faces.
When Peter's taking the pictures of MJ for the paper, Not when Flash knocks him, but when he's like afterwards, when the others leave and they're taking the pictures, and she's going like, yeah, making all these poses. I'm like, this is too much. This is too cheesy. Stop, MJ, just stop.
No, but and you know what? I had the same thought.
Because I'm trying to picture what the photo would actually look like in whatever article that gets written, and it just seems too fake, too staged. You know, it's like.
But it was one of those things that I would be like, okay, one or two pictures. This is just getting weird. And also, there's been some Cat. I always expect you to be an expert, and so it's weird when I'm put in the position of being knowledgeable, not an expert, but knowledgeable. So,
you asked to be. So there you go.
hooray! But there has been, in terms of the tone of the film and the message of the film, is that when Peter is taking the pictures of Mary Jane, that's when the spider descends and bites him, and that's when he sort of goes through the process of puberty. He has a sexual awakening.
Well, that's what Uncle Ben seems to think it is, but even Aunt May mentions later in the movie that, oh, come on, everybody knows you've had a crush on Mary Jane forever. It's not like it's
that's not till later.
Right, but I mean, like, you're referring to the idea of puberty as if, oh, he's suddenly, not only going through all these transformations, but is suddenly attracted to Mary Jane. But he's been that way, attracted to her for a long time.
Since before testosterone, yes.
And I suppose, I'm not even sure with the comics origin or whatever, but she seems to live with like this really jackass dad.
Oh no, but that's part of the comic too. Yeah. She has a very abusive father.
Yeah, and I don't know if the mom's in the picture or not, or what's going on there. He just seems to be like a real jackass, and Flash shows up to pick her up for a date. She's impressed by his car, which I think is a silver Porsche, if I remember correctly.
I don't know the name of the car, although I would like, and this is something that brings us to the creation of Spider-Man and brings us to Bruce Campbell, is that there is a moment where after Peter has been bitten by the spider, he's walking out. Oh my God. And it's so beautiful that you bring up not beautiful, but it's great that you bring up the horrible sort of over the top dramatic. It's like every time Mary Jane leaves her house, her father or stepfather or whatever jumps out and is like, "You're trash. You'll always be trash, just like her, just like your mother." But it's like they do an over the top job of being like, okay, so Mary Jane comes from a bad home. Yeah. But then they're walking to school, and Peter is like, he's starting to feel a little more together because he's been bitten by the spider. He's seen his muscles. He doesn't need his glasses or anything. And he's like, I'm gonna ask you if you want to go for a coffee. And then she gets picked up by her friends. And then he chases after the bus. And that's when he slaps on the side of the bus. And that's when the banner comes off the side of the bus, and it's like, oh, things are changing in Peter. But it's also the first moment where it's like, well, if I had a car, I'd be able to talk to MJ. Which I like that as an early on sort of, again, setup. And we do get another representation of that later on when Peter sees MJ get into Flash's car. He says, I got a new car. And MJ, how do you feel about the relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson?
I feel that she just thinks of him as a friend, safety net type friend, and she doesn't seem to be romantically interested in him, at least not until the end of the movie. Whereas he's just too timid to ask her out. And she seems to be more than happy to go date Flash because it's a way to get away from her house.
Yeah. Well, he has a car.
That too.
So then so he's like, nice car. And he decides, because he's been bitten by the spider, he's going to go and. Do you think I skipped over anything?
I don't know. I mean, just the introduction of Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
Rosemary Harris and. Oh, who played Uncle Ben?
Cliff Robertson. I said it 3 times.
Cliff. All right. Well, sorry.
Yeah. Well, you gotta listen then.
To this show? Never.
Yeah.
But no, they are amazing, and I do appreciate. Like, I think that they do present Uncle Ben as being a moral weight, and I don't say that negatively. Like, he's nice. Cliff Robertson is great. In the same way that Glenn Ford as Jonathan Kent. Don't you? Well, you've seen Glenn Ford as Jonathan Kent.
I have no memory of that.
It's in the beginning of the movie.
It was 15 years ago that I saw that and had to go to work, so I don't remember.
We should cancel this show and do a Superman movie. So, but no, you're absolutely right. In terms of the performances and in terms of the characterization of Aunt May and Uncle Ben, that is a great introduction.
Yeah, I also really like them both as Aunt May and Uncle Ben. They're really great, especially Rosemary Harris.
Yeah. What's wrong with Cliff Robertson?
Nothing.
Okay.
Aunt May obviously has more staying power because she's in all 3 movies.
Well, she doesn't get shot.
Well, it doesn't matter that he gets shot because he does come back in a flashback scene later on.
He comes back in all 3 of these movies.
That's right.
Spoilers.
So, yeah, she still has. I felt that she still has more staying power. I thought she was really good.
I thought so as well.
Yeah.
No, I really like Rosemary Harris as Aunt May, and I thought it was an interesting choice when we get. Sorry?
I was just going to mention before you jump ahead further in the recap, there was something else that we skipped too.
Oh, what's that?
After he misses the bus, we do follow him to school, and that's where he has the incident in the cafeteria, where on the one hand he saves MJ from slipping and losing her lunch tray and catches everything, and then he sees that the web is still stuck onto the tray, and he tries to yank it off, and it flips it back, and it hits Flash, and then Flash decides he's going to fight him in the hall during later on because there was a teacher in the cafeteria or something, and they get to the fight, and everybody's like, oh, fight, doing a cheesy high school thing, which never happens, but always happens in high school movies for some reason. And it was funny because when I first saw this movie, I knew nothing about comics, nothing, and I didn't know why this guy's name was Flash. Like, is that a reference to the Flash? Like, does this guy have powers or something? I'm like, what does this mean? And no, instead Peter just kind of decks him across the room, and at one point somebody asked Harry, "Aren't you going to help him?" And he's like, "Which one?" Because he's just dominating, and he gets in trouble for it, and MJ just kind of doesn't understand. It looks at Peter like, "Oh, how could you?" And then
I think she looks at him like, this is a lot of weird. I don't think that she's angry.
She's a little disappointed. Like, she doesn't picture. She didn't like the fact that they were fighting, but she doesn't like the fact that he hit back as hard as he did. Because she looks at him with this kind of shocked look, like this isn't like you type of thing, to do something like that. And that's when
Well, remember that other guy? He says it's like, "Geez, Parker, you are a freak."
Yeah.
I thought it was just the general population of the high school being like, "That was weird, yo."
Right, they are, but she in particular gives him a look, and the camera lingers on it, so it means something. So, and that's where we follow the montage of him not coming home to help Uncle Ben work on whatever it was they needed to work on. Instead, he goes around trying to learn how to be Spider. Basically, he looks up at his hands, and you have the super close up where you see all the spines coming out of his fingers, and he starts practicing climbing walls and doing all the stuff that's going to help him be Spider-Man. And so when he gets
how did you like that?
I thought that was okay. That was neat.
It's kind of a neat explanation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he got bit by the spider. That's the explanation. So,
Well, no, but I like it when there is some sort of plausible, like, why can he stick to walls? And they show the little spines that come out of his
yeah,
fingertips, and it's like that's okay. Cinematographically very well done in terms of explaining to the audience without being like, I got pointers in my fingers.
that's right. They were supposed to paint one of the rooms in the house or something. So he gets home late at night, and you see the look on his face that he suddenly realizes, oh yeah, I had something I was committed to doing. And Uncle Ben left a note on the stove saying, "There's meatloaf in the oven, Michelangelo." And then, like, the next day, he's messing with his webs in his bedroom and breaks the lamp and tries to grab a Dr. Pepper can, trying and failing a few times. And Aunt May knocks on the door. She's like, "What's going on in there?" And he's like, "I'm not dressed. I'm just exercising." She's like, "You're acting really weird lately."
I'm furiously masturbating to the girl I can see across the lane. Well, it is again, it's a euphemism for like a coming of age. It's a puberty story. Anyway, if I
Well,
may,
yeah.
if I might digress for one just moment, DVB is here. Thank you for being here, DVB. Hey, Scotty and
Hello.
Catherine, big fan of this movie. Thank you, DVB, and also poor Uncle Ben. I agree. One of the ideas for the name of the show was going to be the Uncle Ben Show.
Yeah, I
And
vetoed that part. That was a hard veto on my part. It's like, no,
yeah,
we're calling it the Uncle Ben Show. It
yeah.
especially doesn't work when we get to the Holland films, or even the Spider-Verse movie.
You know, I've never seen Into.
Oh, okay, that'll be fun when we get to that.
Yes. Just for everybody, also, just for everybody asking, we're going to do the live actions and the Spider-Verse, and then I think we're done with the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, we're gonna do both the Spider-Verse films because at the end of this
Yeah.
series is gonna end with Spider-Verse, and then we'll do a special show on like Saturday or whatever for Across the Spider-Verse.
Yes. But yeah, that's the idea. We're not going to watch Civil War because there's a pretty good recap in Far From Home or Homecoming.
Yeah, well,
Anyway.
we tell all that stuff now. Let's move on.
Oh, I didn't know you were on the clock.
I'm not, but I'm saying we don't need to stop on this show.
DVB says Leo DiCaprio as Spidey, directed by James Cameron, would have been nuts. It would have been. And if you have the opportunity to check it out on the internet, I would say, like, Dr. Octopus was going to be a romantic rival for Mary Jane. It was going to be weird. Although DiCaprio is an excellent A-licked actor, I think Toby fit the role perfectly. So do I.
I seem to remember on the making of documentary for Spider-Man 2, they were talking that Doc Ock was going to be their age, and that was why it was going to be like a love triangle type story. I don't remember anything about James Cameron having anything to do with that.
No, I think that was part of the script that he was attached to. Captain Finity is here. Thank you so much for the smiley face bacon. And yeah, we're good.
Right,
so anyway,
this is the part. This was a funny joke too. I don't even know if they meant this as a joke, but when Peter's going through the classifieds looking for a car they can buy, I'm looking at the cars that are priced at like $27,000. Like, some of those models pretty steep because they're basic cars, but then I see things like a Triumph for only like $5,000. I'm like, wait, what? And then I see other classic oldie cars like that for like single digit thousands, as opposed to things like Honda Civic for like 25,000. Like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what planet do you live on? What universe should I say you live on where the nice cars like that like only like that costs like $7,000?
You know,
again, I don't know if you meant it. I don't know if you meant it as a joke, but I thought that was really funny.
Well, I think it's really fun, because numbers don't really mean anything. Like, this is kind of a timeless movie. Just in even Uncle Ben's headstone does not have years on it. It just says Ben Parker, beloved uncle and husband. No year, no date.
but I mean, it doesn't matter the year. It's the fact that like something like a Civic or a regular SUV costs $27,000, but then something like a old classic Triumph only costs like $5,000 or $7,000. I'm like, you gotta be kidding.
No, but what I'm saying is that like the money of the situation is just like how much should a car cost? I don't know. Crappy car is
No,
this.
what I'm saying is that it would make more sense if the numbers were the other way around in that instance. That does make you kind of aware of the weirdness of it.
Then maybe I'm mistaken. I liked that abstract idea that you can't read in dreams.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking
No,
whenever it comes to numbers in this movie.
actually, I've never heard that abstract before. That's interesting. Kind of like
Well,
when
it's just
everybody says, "Oh, you've all had the flying dream." I'm like, no.
exactly. Well, and
Yeah.
anyway. So it is interesting. Like this movie, except for one instance, is very much out of time. Like obviously, there's no ever presence of cell phones. There's one payphone, but yeah, there's something about it being distorted in time. It's kind of like when you see a 1970s Superman movie and people are wearing fedoras and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is this in the 70s or is this supposed to be in the 50s? Is this 2002 or is this, 1977? I don't know. Like there's parts. Anyway, we'll get to the Green Goblin in a moment. So, where were we?
Peter has come up with his plan to make a costume and go to because he's seen the ad for the wrestling match thing where you get $3,000.
I do enjoy the montage of him trying to decide on his costume.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy that his first costume is basically just an airbrush spray paint.
Yeah, and that's when Uncle Ben and Aunt May are talking downstairs and they think there's something wrong with him. You should talk to him, kind of thing. And Peter's lies and says he's going to go to the library, but Uncle Ben insists on giving him a ride. And when Peter finally concedes, Uncle Ben turns around and gives like the thumbs up and the wink to Aunt May, and like, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. See what's going on. And then she just kind of smiles and they take off to the library.
And that's the last time that May saw Ben.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Personal question.
Okay.
If there were a flashback actor in modern Spider-Man to play Uncle Ben, who would you like it to be?
Ooh, that could take forever to figure that out. Oh man.
Well, chew on it. You don't have to answer now. So anyway,
think about with that. The other thing I have to think about with that is that Marissa Tomei is a lot younger than Rosemary Harris was. I assume that's what you mean by modern Spider-Man, like the current iteration.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd have to think of who would Tomei be good with. So I'd have to think about that.
Pesci?
Huh?
Pesci? Joe Pesci?
Maybe. Sure. I guess. I mean.
Well, it'll be a My Cousin Vinny vibe.
Right. Yeah. You could do that. Yeah. I suppose.
Joe Pesci is Uncle Ben. I would take it. No, I wouldn't. Who do I? Oh, you know who I want to play Uncle Ben? Guess.
No.
John Hamm.
Really? In that modern iteration? Okay.
I'd take it. I'm not going to say no. Anyway, so Uncle Ben takes Peter to the wrestling match. But before Peter... Sorry?
He takes him to the library.
The library is the auspices of the particular car ride. Yes. And before getting out, Peter is like, okay, I gotta go. And Ben is like, Peter, you got a lot of shit going on, yo. Paraphrasing, of course. There are a lot of changes going on. And I just want you to be aware that now He's like, this is important. You are becoming the man that you are going to be. And I just want you to be aware of that. Peter doesn't want to have a bit of this conversation.
Yeah.
I am busy. I am about to get $3,000 so I can get laid. And Ben says, I know you're full of hormones. You got into this fight at school. You've been jerking off in your room, or at least that's what it sounds like. Like, dude, I just want you to be aware of what you're going through. Know that I support you. And I don't want to lecture you. I'm not your father. At which point Peter says,
And stop pretending to be.
and Ben, all right, I'll see you when you're done. So Ben goes away. And that's a harsh interaction.
Yeah.
It's an understanding interaction. It's an emotional interaction.
Yeah.
If you know what's coming. If you don't know what's coming, I'm on Peter's side. Shut up. I'm busy. Fuck off. Ben's trying his hardest.
Yeah.
So Peter walks into the library and they're having a wrestling match.
Yeah, he takes off down the street to the wrestling match. And this is where we had a cameo by Octavia Spencer. And she makes him sign the waiver.
Yes. May God be with you.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, you're definitely gonna get mangled in here. And funny that once he's, Bruce Campbell asked for his name because the ad said colorful character is a must. And he's like, I'm the human spider. He's like, what? Come on, that sounds stupid. What's another? I'm the human spider. It's like, no, Spider-Man, which sounds infinitely better and cooler. But Peter's just being a dork about it when the spotlight comes on him and the curtain drops. So he's like, oh, he's got my name wrong, the human spider. And I just like, oh, God, Peter. So he goes into the ring, and I assume they got somebody to play this wrestler, like an actual wrestler. I don't know, because I'm not into that whole thing.
That's Randy Macho Man Savage.
Okay. I'm not a WWE person.
No, but, it is well known that I am not a big fan of pandas. But back in the day, when it was called the WWF, as it should be called, that's when Randy Macho Man Savage was there, and they got him to play Bonesaw. I thought that this was amazing casting at the time. Okay. Still do. Yeah. It was crazy. I don't think that there's a better person that they could have got.
It was funny when the cage closed against him and he's freaking out about complaining that, you didn't say this was a cage match, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, the fact that it's a cage match is going to work to your advantage because he does jump high up on the bars to avoid getting hit for a bit. And sure.
Oh, do you want to talk about the gay slur? Do you think it's a gay slur?
I can't remember. What was it?
Well, so Spider-Man jumps up in the cage and he looks down and he's like, and Randy is like, what are you doing up there? And Spider-Man says, staying away from you. Nice outfit. Did your husband buy it for you? And then Randy, Macho Man Savage, Bonesaw McGraw, gets all uppity about it. Now, some people have interpreted that as being a slur. I thought it was just like wrestling taunting.
It was funny because he's taunting him because the guy's clearly super macho and is going to take that in an offensive way. That's why he says it.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure butch dudes can be gay.
Yeah, but I mean, he could tell from looking at this guy in particular that he just assumes that he's going to take that the wrong way, and so he just taunts him with it.
I don't know.
Because obviously Peter doesn't know anything about him,
Well, and Peter doesn't really know anything about heterosexual interactions, let alone gay ones. Anyway, so they fight, they fight, they fight, they fight, they fight, and Spider-Man wins. There is an obvious dismissal of the spider sense because they do show the spider sense thing earlier. And in this one, like, what is it? Bonesaw brings a chair. Spider-Man doesn't know about it. And then what else do they bring? Like when they bring out the crowbar, I'm just like, beat him to death. It doesn't make any sense. But Spider-Man wins. And so he goes up to the manager's office, the man in charge of the gate of this, I'm assuming, completely and totally legal attempted murder in a cage. And he was there to sign up for $3,000. He's given $100. And he says, "Are you serious? $100? You said 3." And it's like semantics. And Spider-Man leaves. And then somebody robs the gate for all the money. He runs down the hallway. Spider-Man could stop him. He's not going to, and he doesn't. And then everyone says, "Why didn't you stop him?" And he's like, "Because I don't care. F off. You effed me, I'm effing you."
Well, it's because when he pointed out the line, the guy's like, "Yeah, you're supposed to spend 3 minutes in the cage. You were barely in there for 1 minute." And he's like, but I still beat him. And the guy's like, "Well, I missed the part where that's my problem." And so because first it's the cop who'd ask Peter, "Why didn't you tackle the guy?" And he doesn't say anything. But then when the stupid employee comes up to him and is whining to Peter about, "That guy took all my money," and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the part where that's my problem." And then he kind of gave him a look because he realized that, yeah, okay. And then then he walks away. And that's when we have like a crossfade to Peter walking back to the library, and you have everybody gathered around Uncle Ben, who's been shot and carjacked.
Yeah. And the last two things that that Cliff Robertson, as Ben Parker says, is like, "Peter, enjoy that he's seeing. Thank heaven someone is with me." And then, very similar to James Kirk dying in Generations.
Of course.
I'm a Star Trek fan, Cat. I can't help it.
That's why I said, of course.
Instead of saying, "Oh my," Ben Parker says, "Peter." He's scared. He's looking into the face of the unknown. And he dies. And Tobey Maguire provides one of the best ugly cries in the history of crying ugly. And then, sorry?
To think he was paid to do that.
I think he expresses grief perfectly. And also, considering what happens in the background in terms of hearing the radio saying, "We found the shooter. He's in a car going this way and that way in Manhattan." And Peter jumps into action, runs, gets his pseudo Spider-Man gear on, and he chases and he learns how to web swing on the fly. And why does he do it? Because he has to. Am I going to get Uncle Ben's killer? Well, I better. Like, and that's how he learns.
Yeah, and he does corner him in an abandoned building, and he doesn't recognize him at first, but then eventually he does. And they do this thing where you hesitate for a moment, you wonder if he pushed him, but then they show that he actually tripped.
Yeah.
Fell out the window to his own death.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
It's weird, though, because I never got I am not under the impression that Spider-Man does not kill. Are you under the impression that Spider-Man does not kill?
Yeah, I mean, I never really got that vibe from the few comics I've read or the other films and stuff. He doesn't seem to kill people. He like ties them up to leave them for the police, or
Like,
you know, he didn't. I didn't think he was good. Plus, you can't have him kill this guy. You can't.
no, it
The
was a
movie,
good call. Like that
yeah,
one edit of him tripping over, and it's like Spider-Man didn't kill him. That's
yeah,
great.
you can't have him kill him for the same reason you couldn't have Thor kill Thanos in Infinity War. You can't.
But Thor did kill Thanos in Endgame.
The difference is that in both Infinity War and in this particular instance in Spider-Man, is both the heroes are motivated purely by vengeance and selfish vengeance, and that's not really a good thing to reward for your heroes. To have their bloodthirsty vengeance satisfied, and that's why in Endgame when Thor does kill Thanos, it's no longer about vengeance or anything. He's just depressed and it's over, and there's nothing they can do about it. So what does it matter? Whereas, and that's why he's punished for it. Whereas if you were to have him kill that would be like saying, because that was clearly in that whole movie, Thor's whole goal, much like Peter's whole goal in this chase, was to kill the guy who killed his uncle, and Thor's whole goal was to kill the guy who killed his brother. And it's like that with everybody else in that movie was trying to save the universe. Thor was motivated by just pure selfish vengeance, and Peter was motivated by that in this instance too, which is why you can't have either of those characters, consequences be damned, kill either of those people. Which is why it's a good call that he trips and falls out the window instead, and it's not really on Peter.
Hi, Jill.
Hi.
Yeah, but Thor killed Thanos out of pure vengeance in Endgame.
That wasn't a vengeance thing, though. He was already, like I said, he was already depressed, and there was nothing that could be done anyway. It was over with.
So he just murdered a person in cold blood?
No, it's about the fact that Thanos at that point also wasn't going to stop either. But we're not going to go. We'll go down that road if we review those films another time. But let's continue with the Spider-Man, because he comes home, and I thought it was interesting that Aunt May is there in her pajamas, but there's nobody with her or anything. But she seems to have already heard the news somehow. Like word has gotten back to her, and they just kind of embrace.
You know what? Here, I was thinking about this very specifically. I was thinking what the progress of time would have been. And so, Ben gets killed. Cops are paying attention. Ambulance shows up. Peter is not in any way required to stick around legally. Yep. Like he says, he's my uncle. He shows up, and then they give like the law enforcement, they give him space. And then when he picks up on what's going on, he bolts. I don't think the police need him. Well, and also they're not going to find him.
Well, I never said anything about them looking for him or finding him. I just thought it was odd.
I'm just thinking about the logic of the situation. And so he goes off and he does his Spider-Man thing. He catches the carjacker. He trips out of a window. I do appreciate the fact that there was a police boat because it was near the harbor. They do set that up he's headed towards the whatever and water. And then Peter comes home. Peter could lie about everything. Like May is like, they meet, they pause, they discuss briefly, and then they hug. And it's like, I was there, I knew, I ran away, I didn't know where to go. He's dead, I know. Like there is something touching. Like I really appreciate throughout all three of these movies the relationship between Peter and May. This is amazing. It's almost grandmotherly, which is, that's a victim of the comic. They always make Aunt May look old.
Yeah.
Anyway, so next thing you know, what do we got?
I just thought it was weird.
We got a Willem Osborne.
Yeah, I was just saying I found it odd because it's clear that they don't say anything to each other. They just kind of stand there looking at each other blankly for a second, then they embrace.
Well, it's a good
It's kind
point.
of,
It's a good time
yeah,
to point out Danny Elfman's score in terms of that mournful responsibility feeling that is brought.
yeah,
Like they don't say anything because it's all about the physical, like the visual performance with
yeah,
the music that is swelling at that moment. It makes you feel the weight of the death of Uncle Ben.
yeah.
So that's how I saw it. Oh my God, Cat, I know you can't touch buttons, but I really gotta pee.
Okay.
So don't touch buttons. Um, who's your favorite Spider-Man villain?
Uh, like comics or uh
Any of them?
movies. Or, well, Doc Ock's pretty cool. And
Okay,
Green
talk about
Goblin.
Doc Ock for a second and how excited you are for Spider-Man 2, and I will be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
Knew you were gonna say that. No, just hurry, go. Jesus Christ. I'm not gonna talk about that because we're gonna talk about that next week. But meanwhile, some things have been going on with Osborn. His project's going to get shut down, so he decides in the classic comic book trope, I'm going to test it on myself. It goes horribly wrong. He becomes like this psycho. He wakes up back at home on the floor. Harry finds him. An employee rushes in and tells him that the other scientist, Dr. Strom, is dead, probably murdered, and that the flight suit and glider have been stolen. Harry kind of acts kind of like, oh, I don't know what's going on type of thing. And Norman, you could tell and look on his face that he knows, but he's not going to say it yet. And that kind of segues into one of his first kind of Jekyll and Hyde moments where he keeps hearing the voice of the goblin in the house as he's looking around in the mansion. And this mansion, I might say, is a really nice looking pad that's at the top of a. It's like a regular high rise, like apartment complex or something. That has this beautiful mansion like carved out of the top of it, if you will. That's how it always looks to me. Uh, it's just something that's just feels out of place. Uh, I just thought it was kind of interesting. Harry, meanwhile, his whole friendship with Peter, I've never really bought into in this movie. It's kind of like Harry just seems like a bit of a dope. The way he interacts with Peter and MJ, and like the way he scolds MJ later, and it's like he's embarrassed for his wealth, but then he sometimes acts a bit entitled for it. And I just never really bought into this friendship. I get that opposites attract, but I just maybe it's just the casting. It didn't really work for me. Especially given the nature of their character relationship between Peter and Harry in the sequel. But in this movie, it's like, okay, and there's like some time passes. It's not really clear how much time has passed, but graduation happens, and Norman offers to be there for Peter, and it's clear that Norman is once again being nicer to Peter than he is to his own son at his own son's graduation. And you can tell that's bothering Harry. And Aunt May mentions she would have been happy if Uncle Ben was there to see it. They have a moment at home about that. And Harry apparently starts dating MJ, but he doesn't tell Peter. And Peter ends up figuring that out incidentally from MJ during one of the conversations when he sees her leaving her job, which is like at a restaurant. And he's
Apparently,
like,
it's a
oh,
very famous. Apparently, it's a very famous New York landmark.
what's it called?
The Moon Dance Diner, I think.
The Moon. Yeah, okay, I thought so. So I kind of recognized the outside of it a bit, but I didn't see the name.
I
But
really
yeah,
love.
seems like
I love that interaction. I love that interaction, and it's mostly because of the manager of the Moon Dance Diner, where Mary Jane is trying to um, sort of cover up that she's just a waitress. She's not really an actress yet, and she's like, "Oh no, I am acting." And then the manager comes out and says, "Miss Watson, I'm talking to you." And you were short $6. Next time I'm taking it out of your paycheck. And then Mary Jane turns around and yells, "I get you, Enrique." And then, "All right, don't let it happen again. Don't you roll your eyes at me." That is one of my favorite lines in any movie ever.
You see, this just goes back to one of the criticisms I have of the film. It's like, okay, she has the dream that she's going to be the actress. Obviously, it's not going to happen, right? But she's apparently too dim to know that because she's working at the restaurant and she's like in Paris and doesn't want Harry to find out. And she's like, "Oh yeah," she tried to play it off like she just left work for left an acting gig. Like, "Oh yeah, I just finished blah blah blah." And that's when the Enrique character came out, and I'm like, okay. But everything just seems too cheesy on the nose with her character in this movie. It just kind of, I never really jived with it that much.
Well,
it felt too. I get it. It is a comic book movie, and it's trying to do that. I just felt it was a bit more two-dimensional, I guess.
Well, do you feel? I was watching an interesting thing about Dick Tracy.
Uh-huh.
And it was about how capturing the feel of the comic book was important in terms of telling the story of the character.
Yeah.
And how the seriousing up of Batman might be detrimental to the character in terms of the presentation. Like, isn't there a certain level of whimsy, joy, flippancy that is supposed to be presented in these trifles?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be cheesy.
But what if the original material is cheesy?
Well, all of the original comic books started out that way, and then they got better with writing, over the years.
Well, and we will get there, and I want to pick up this conversation when we talk about the Amazing Spider-Man, the first one. But I think that this movie perfectly encapsulates what I think. It's like, this is better than Friends. This is what it's like to live in New York City. You bump into people. It's all colorful. Spider-Man's there. Like, I don't think it's. I really enjoy it in terms of the contrivances and some of the silliness and some of the melodrama. It reflects back upon the source material more than, like, I see more Tim Burton than Batman. I see more Adam West than Batman. When I watch Spider-Man, I kind of see Spider-Man.
Okay.
So that's where I'm coming from in terms of my fandom. I don't want to gush, but I am.
Yeah.
So anyway, she doesn't tell Harry. He doesn't tell Harry. Where do we go after that? After the moon?
The big,
oh, have we blown up Quest yet?
It's where Osborn has been. We go to the board meeting where Osborn finds out he's going to be asked to resign because the company. And this is a really weird scene because the board members are talking about it like it's such a positive thing that your company is being sold, absorbed by something else, but you're not going to come with us. Oh, but it's okay because you're getting like a package, a care package, and it's like, why are they stupid enough to think he's going to be excited about this? I mean, I because the guy who chairs the meeting opens it up and saying, "Oh, it's great news. We've been bought by AstroCorp or whatever it is," and it's like, well, why do you think Norman's going to be happy about being asked to give up everything? I don't really get it.
But I don't think he's being asked to give up everything. Workaholics. People who can't be bought off.
Yeah.
Like, and it is apparent, and it's a testament to Willem Dafoe's performance of Norman Osborn, is that he doesn't want to abandon something that he built.
That's why I'm saying that it's clear that it's bizarre that they think you would like this development. Like, why would he
Well,
like that? Why is he going to like being told that his company's been sold and that he's going to be kicked out of his own company, basically? Like, it's just kind of weird the way they framed that. And he has the sensible reaction to that. And his response is to, after having his little mini meltdown at them, is to go get the goblin suit and attack the quest demonstration. And killing the general there too. And you could tell just how much more clunky and lame the flight suit was that Quest was working on.
yeah.
And he just blows it up and kills them. It's like, yeah, okay, I saw that coming. And from there, we go to the parade, I believe.
Well, it's not a parade. You know what it's called?
What?
The World Unity Festival.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember the late 90s, early 2000s? Let's not forget this was filmed before September 2001. And so it's I do adore that there is a World Unity Festival. It's so naive.
Yeah, kind of like every time people say, "What do you want to wish for?" I wish for world peace. It's like, okay, that's a loaded question. Is there?
Well, and even Max is like, "Oh, they must have added this new this year." Like it's such a hyper, like yes, we're having a World Unity Festival, and our headliner, or at least our afternoon entertainment, will be Macy Gray. It's just so 2000.
Well, it's kind of like when you hear about real world parallels of festivals like that, where they're talking about how they're going to change the world. It's like, no, you're not. You're just doing. It's like, yeah, it's nice you're doing a charitable event, but that's the most of what it is.
Fair enough. But also, speaking of the World Unity Festival, how did you feel about the balloons? Did you feel like it was a Batman ripoff?
Not really, because the balloons weren't loaded with gas, and the goblin didn't bring them there and didn't arrange everybody to come and kill everybody there. That was a bit different. Granted, the balloons become dangerous in and of themselves, as they would. But I did notice that some of the balloons, I'm guessing, like the globe one specifically, had to be blown up right in that square, because I'm looking at how huge it is. Like, is that going to fit down down some of the narrow side streets there, which went into that square?
Well, the one that falls down on the boy who would certainly die by William Shatner swinging in and grabbing him, like that kid's Spider-Man swings in and grabs the kid, and I'm like, that kid's ribs are broken.
Yeah, like that kid was pretty dumb anyway, just standing there, like, because basically the goblin flies in and slices the side of the balloon, and he kills everything.
Well,
because when Harry first shows up and greets the other board members, it's clear that he doesn't know yet, and he's like, "Where's my dad?" And they're like, I don't think he's coming today." I'm like, really? That's how you're gonna play this?
That doesn't make any sense. Then why is he there?
Right. It's like you fired him, and I guess he didn't bother telling Harry, or they assumed he would have, but they didn't rescind their invitation or their clearance to get up there at that, exclusive balcony presentation. So it's like, okay. Peter, meanwhile, who I forgot to mention, has since taken up a job with photography at the Daily Bugle, is down below watching Harry and MJ. And that's when the goblin shows up, and they do the classic thing during the montage of everybody panicking, where he's running down the street, pulling the coat open, and you see the Spider-Man suit. Kind of like the whole.
How did you feel about? How did you feel about? Like, I kind of thought, again, I just came off of the whole thing. Like, when I was watching it in theaters the first time, I was like, "Oh, those balloons! I don't like those balloons. They remind me of Batman." And then they do the Superman shirt pull. I'm like, I'm not 100% sure about this.
Like, how do you? I just viewed it as a classic superhero trope in general, like shedding the secret identity to be here. Let me try on like here. Shedding the secret.
Thank you. I like your face.
Hero. And so
I prefer seeing you.
It's kind of a generic thing, and so I was fine with it. And I was fine with the fact that nobody seemed to notice, because it's like, yeah, they're doing the classic superhero trope where he's gonna rush into set like Clark Kent and nobody recognizes him. That he's Superman even when he wears glasses, that kind of thing. We get a pass for that type of stuff. So he shows up as Spider-Man, and Green Goblin throws a bomb underneath the balcony, severing its supports, and then he flies by again, where looks at all the board members. He's like, "Out, am I?" And he throws another one, killing them all, and they all like evaporate into skeletons. MJ,
Kills a handy, capable man.
Yeah, and MJ starts falling off one of the corner parts of the balcony, and Harry can't reach her, so she eventually falls, and Spider-Man has to dive down and grab her, and he does, or actually before he does that, he does fight the Green Goblin, like you mentioned. They have their like little fist fight type of thing where he knocks him off the glider, and they start like beating each other up on fisticuffs.
Yeah. And you know what? Some of the CGI is good. Some of the CGI is bad. I'm not going to give any of it like an F or an A. But I think for the time, it holds up.
Yeah, it holds up for the movie, for the whole look of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually, Peter managed to damage the glider, so it starts smoking and going all haywire. And the Goblin just kind of pulls back. He's like, "We'll meet again, Spider-Man." And that's when he goes to rescue MJ as she's falling. And this is where we also have our Stan Lee cameo. He saves the
kid. Yes. No, you do the Stan Lee cameo, and then I'll do the chef's kiss.
Yeah. Stan Lee saves a kid from falling debris by pushing them out of the way just in time.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, one of the all-time perfect lines from a Spider-Man villain that had to be in the movie to even assist in tying the whole movie together was, "We'll meet again, Spider-Man." You had to have that. Like, that's not... People talk about member berries nowadays, but that was something that you heard in cartoons, comics, everything. Well, just cartoons and comics, because that's pretty much everything. But it was amazing to hear the Green Goblin, especially as played by Willem Dafoe, be like, "We'll meet again, Spider-Man." It was so good. So good. Like even the clouds behind the glider of the Green Goblin, I was like, yes. Like, this is the first time I saw something on screen and I was like, that's how it's supposed to look. From Tobey Maguire climbing to the Green Goblin's glider. Like, we can talk about the helmet on Willem Dafoe until the cows come home, but there is so much else that this movie gets pitch perfect. It blows my mind.
Mm-hmm. So from there, Peter takes MJ to the rooftop of this building that's got like a garden and everything. He drops her off, and she's like, "Wait, I know who you are." And he's like, "Yeah, you do." She's like, "I do." He's like, "Yeah, I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." He just does a backflip off the building, and he later that night he's talking with Harry, and Harry's like, "What do you think that was anyway?" The goblin, referring to the goblin's like, "Man, I don't know." And it gets a phone call, and it's MJ, and she's apparently raving about Spider-Man, how incredible he is. And I noticed how they use the word.
What do you mean incredible?
Yeah, what do you mean incredible instead of the word amazing?
Or spectacular.
Yeah, and Peter kind of smirks as he's listening to them have this conversation. Not long afterwards, he has another run-in with MJ after she gets off a shift and talking about how she's going to audition for plays or whatever. They're happy and things are looking up for them. She goes to walk down an alley and some thugs follow her, so that Peter goes after her as Spider-Man, saves her from the thugs, and that's where you have the iconic upside down kiss in the rain.
Oh my God, can I tell you about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So they have a rain machine.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire is upside down. All of the blood is rushing to his head.
Yeah.
Kirsten Dunst is being very seductive with her performance in terms of the mask, which makes sense. It works on film.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire is dying with a migraine throughout that entire scene. If you look at the veins on his neck, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they made you do that.
Yeah.
That's a paraphrase of how he described one of the best kisses in cinematic history.
Well, it was also, he said that the water from the rain machine kept pouring down. He's upside down, and it keeps pouring on his nose, and it keeps seeping through the mask, so it made it difficult to breathe.
Nearly drowning.
Yeah. So he said that really isn't. It's the most unpleasant screen kiss he's ever had. Was having to do
Yes.
because of all that stuff.
Would you agree that it is one of the best cinematic kisses of all time?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I would say that it is in my top 5. I don't have a top 5. Now I need a top 5. But that one is certainly within it. I would even say it's a top 3. I don't know what the other 2 are.
So we should backpedal a little bit and talk about when he went to go get his job with J. Jonah Jameson.
True, the great J.K. Simmons.
Yeah, epic scene stealer, perfect cat. One of the most pitch perfect casting for any comic book character. Period. It's perfect.
Another chef kiss.
He's hysterical, and he's very suspicious of everybody, and yet he has like a couple of nice people. Like what's the guy's name? Is the main guy who's always butting heads with him over his vilification.
I want to say
Spider-Man.
Bill Mummy, but I think that's Will Robinson.
Yeah,
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I find it funny that he's got this such wholesome, good person working underneath him who puts up with all of his bullshit. And he's like, why is he wearing a mask? He has something to hide. He's always there when trouble happens, and he's too stupid to put 2 and 2 together, or he just doesn't care. He just wants
He's Robbie Robertson. Robbie from the Spider-Man comics is the associate editor, co-editor, whatever but like he's a character. Like he's totally in it.
Yeah, Robbie Robertson, and you could tell that he hates the fact that he has to write these negative stories about Spider-Man because they had a montage showing how people think he's a hero, but clearly Jameson is the only one who doesn't think that. And I thought it was funny that Peter keeps trying to sell the photos to him because it's like, Peter, if you have a problem with him vilifying Spider-Man, I'm sure there's plenty of other papers in the city that would love to buy Spider-Man's pictures off of you.
Bill Nunn.
That's right. So what was your take on? Because again, I can't really ever get past the fact that Peter, you're kind of not in a position to complain about the stories that he writes about Spider-Man, but you're the one who keeps supplying him with the pictures. When there's probably plenty of other people in the city, publications which would love to have those pictures.
Well, but he's obviously it's an interesting commentary on media. Is J. Jonah Jameson has always been a profiteer.
Yeah.
The news is a way to make money.
Yeah.
And that has existed under J. Jonah Jameson's tenure at the Daily Bugle since the beginning of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So J. Jonah Jameson is fake news, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think the performance and the characterization, let's not forget later on, spoilers, there's going to be a situation where the Green Goblin shows up and says to J. Jonah Jameson, where is the guy who takes the pictures of Spider-Man? And J. Jonah Jameson...
We might as well just talk about that scene right now because it's like the next scene anyway, where he throws the bomb outside the building and it blows it up, and he shows up there on the glider looking for the guy who takes Spider-Man's picture.
But the thing is that J. Jonah Jameson does not give up Peter Parker, and that's amazing.
Yeah, that was surprising too. It's like the guy's so quick to be suspicious of everybody, vilify everybody, and initially he wasn't going to pay Peter anything, and then he concedes, okay, sold, get what you want, that kind of thing. But then he's protecting Peter, which is really cool. And then when Spider-Man shows up, he's like, I knew you two were in this together, and he just shoots him with the web shooter just shut his mouth. He's like, shut up, the adults are talking. And then Goblin is revealed to have some magic sleeping gas that he sprays out of his wrist gauntlets on Spider-Man.
Yeah, I was fine with it.
And yeah, it was kind of odd. Like, oh, okay. And then he takes him away. And even though it's still daylight, apparently nobody sees where they go. And he must fly around in circles for a while because Peter doesn't wake up till nightfall on this rooftop where the Goblin is not interested in finding out who Spider-Man is, which I like, because he doesn't try and take off the mask or anything. He's just interested in finding out what's your angle here. It's like you could be the hero, you could be the villain, and what people love to see more than a hero is they love to see you fall, that type of thing. And teasing him whether he wants a partnership or not, he eventually just leaves. He's like, think about it, hero, and takes off on the glider. And then in a bit of a cheesy thing, the very next scene is a little montage of Peter walking through the town, seeing all the headlines relating to Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, he bad.
And they immediately replay the audio clip from Goblin saying, they will tear you down or whatever. It's like he literally just said that in the previous scene. I'm not that dim that you need to repeat it again. And it's like, okay.
It would have been nice if there was a juxtaposition between Uncle Ben and Green Goblin. With great power comes great responsibility versus, and I did notice that myself as well. And putting that with, they'll tear you down no matter how wet they want to tear you down. And so that would have been a nice balance, but they didn't do that.
Yeah. And so from there we go to a scene of Spider-Man. Actually, no, we find out that Peter apparently has been fired. He had a job with Dr. Connors apparently, and he got fired from it. And it's like, oh, so Dr. Connors was apparently in the background somewhere in this movie because he doesn't show up in this film. And Peter apparently was working for him at some point. And so he got fired for that, and he's looking for work. And Norman offers to help, and he declines, saying, I want to make my own way. And once again, Norman kind of upstaging his own son in front of Peter, where he's like, I admire that in a guy like you, being your own man type of thing. And Harry just kind of looks kind of sheepishly off to the side because you could tell that this relationship just isn't good. And so Peter leaves, and then we eventually get to this next action scene where there's a fire at an apartment complex. He races in and this lady's like, help, my baby, help. And so he runs inside, he saves the baby and brings her back. And then the cop's like, you better stay here. I'm going to arrest you for this. And they hear that somebody else is upstairs. And he's like, I'm going to be here when you get back. He's like, I'm not coming back, Chief. He's like, fine, go. So he takes off inside to save this other person who turns out to be Goblin in disguise.
Wait, before you move on. This is a really good scene before the Goblin shows up. Like, there's a house on fire, and the woman who plays the mother, who is being like, and I don't know how the mother and the baby got separated, but she's like, rescue my baby. And so Spider-Man shows up.
Yeah.
Which is how Spider-Man works. He's like, oh no, there's smoke over there. I should check it out. And he shows up, he goes into the building. The tension in that one scene of like, what is he doing in there? Like, what is going on? What is taking him so long? It is taken from the perspective of the mother of the baby who wants her baby rescued. And it is so tense. And when he fought, and then there's an explosion. And she breaks down. Mama Bear breaks down. And then Spider-Man pops out. And she breaks down even more in joy. And it's like, she hugs Spider-Man. And Spider-Man's like, your baby is fine. And they show a picture of the baby. Like they take off the blankets and the baby is, obviously crying because loud noises. But everything is perfect. And there's a hug. God bless you, Spider-Man, says the mother. And then the cops show up and be like, all right, F you, pal. You're coming with us. And then someone else starts screaming in the house. And one of the people outside says, there's someone else in there. And so Spider-Man says, I'm going to go. And this is part of the mythology of Spider-Man, is that, you know what, we cannot condone a vigilante such as this. Well, if you have a problem with the spider signal, you can take it up with maintenance. Well, that's not the case here. Spider-Man just does what Spider-Man does, and the cops are like, I don't even know what to do. Like, there's the back when Lucy Lawless, when Xena was here, and it's like, guy with 8 hands sounds hot, or however many hands. But there's like Jim Norton, and he's like, he's a vigilante, and I don't like him. He's weird. And like, there's so many. There's a difference in New York as to how people feel about it, and about Spider-Man. And so when Spider-Man says he's going back in the house, and it's like, I'm going to arrest you when you get back, and Spider-Man is like, not coming back. And it's like, well, then just go rescue the person. Then we get some ridiculous 90s action. It ends up being, did Cat leave? I've left. Right here. I don't know. So Spider-Man goes up, and he's gonna, like, he's been lured into this building that was set on fire, obviously by the Green Goblin. And so Spider-Man is looking for a screaming Ned Flanders. Turns out to be the Green Goblin. Green Goblin, after they'd had their negotiation about, join me and we can rule New York as father and son, Spider-Man took too long, and Green Goblin said, well, did you think about it? And Spider-Man says one of the worst lines in cinematic history. Green Goblin says, are you in or are you out? And Spider-Man says, Cat, do you know it?
No.
It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind.
That's right.
That is first draft. Anyway, so they fight. And Spider-Man leaves, I guess.
He gets cut by one of the goblins.
True.
One of his spinners slices his arm, and then he races home for Thanksgiving because he showed up late. And he gets inside, takes off the mask, and he feels like he's safe. But then he hears Aunt May and Harry and Norman. And
this is like right after the fight. They go to Thanksgiving dinner.
Right, but he's still got the bloody. It's like not even dried blood. It's still leaking.
Oh, it's still moist. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not days later. It's the same day, basically.
When you see Norman going to Thanksgiving, his eyes are rolling into the back of his head.
Yeah, because he's come from the fire and what just happened there. And so Peter freaks out. So he take off the mask and he hears because he took off the mask and he hears everybody downstairs, and they all enter the room and they're like, and Norman looks around. He's like, he's kind of a slob, isn't he? And Aunt May is like, all geniuses are, and they're looking around and everybody turns to leave. And then as Norman's turning to leave, we see that Peter is hiding on the ceiling, and a drop of blood falls from his hand or from his arm and lands on the floor. And it's only because of the goblin's own goblin sense, I suppose, that he's able to hear that, but he doesn't see it. And so he turns around, doesn't see anything. So he goes back downstairs. Peter shows up and pretends that he showed up late. Everybody's happy. They're having Thanksgiving dinner. And at one point, Norman spots or Aunt May spots the injury to Peter's arm. She's like, Peter, you're bleeding. And Norman kind of thinks about it for a minute. And Peter plays it off as nothing. But then Norman can see from the pattern, the wound pattern, what it is. And he knows exactly what it is. And he comes up with an excuse to leave. And Harry tries to stop him outside the foyer. And he's like, come on, I wanted you to meet MJ. This is important to me. And he's tells him off and says some really mean things about MJ, that she's just she's with you because of your money.
Oh no, this is amazing. This is one of my favorite things that I always like to tell every single person that I've ever had a romantic interaction with. Oh, they're beautiful. They're all beautiful. Do what you want to do with them and then broom them fast.
Yeah.
Really kind of harsh.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
I just wanted to quote the actual line. It's Now, here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin, do you think that they're one and the same? Do you think that they're heightened examples of one another?
Probably to some extent.
So you think that Norman Osborn is naturally
well, no,
rather...
like you said, he's heightened. He might be worried about certain people like that would be skulking around because they envy their money, but doesn't mean that he would say that. It's a goblin who's kind of saying it.
So you don't think that like we never learn anything about Harry's mom?
No, we never do. And we don't really get to see much outside of Norman than the scenes which are absolutely necessary to the plot. Like, we don't get to spend much time with him to see what his personality is like. We only see how much more impressed he is with Peter than he is with Harry.
I like that.
Yeah, I know, I do. I'm just saying that in terms of whether that was the goblin talking or whether it was Norman, I think it's the goblin talking more so.
I believe everything. Okay, you go first.
Norman was down with everything going on at Thanksgiving until he saw the blood. And when he saw that and he saw the injury, that's where the goblin sense starts taking over, because he realizes that's Spider-Man, and that's when the goblin personality starts taking over, which is why he was in a rush to leave, and he unleashed a bit of the goblin outside in the foyer. So I don't think that was Norman talking.
Well, and yes, but I only believe Norman Osborn before he goes into the chamber, I guess. And then after that, I don't know what's going on. But it is. And also, let's not forget, after he leaves very abruptly, says the broom her fast line. And then he goes and he's like, okay, well, now we have to go and try and kill Aunt May.
Yeah, and
we attack her heart, Norman.
But before that, even Harry, MJ gets mad at Harry, saying, thanks for sticking up for me. And then it shows how much of a dick Harry really is. He's like, he's just a great man, and keep your mouth shut about things you don't understand. Again, more to the point of why I don't like Harry in these movies. He just seems kind of like a dope.
I don't want to be. I don't want. Pardon me. I apologize for the coughing. But Harry in the comics really suffers from the same sort of thing, but he does it to a much more hardcore as we go through these movies. Harry does obviously present himself as an alcoholic. He does numb his pain, but one of the famous issues of the Spider-Man is, I think it's amazing, and it's Harry becomes a heroin addict. Like, he does become sort of a tragic character attempting to escape the guilt that he feels for not living up to his father's legacy, but also as a person who does have to come to terms with his father's legacy as the Green Goblin. I think, if I could be wrong, people who know better than I will know better than I.
Well, that sounds about right.
And so they do, if you want to surface level do that, This movie does do that in terms of the guilt of not living up to the expectations of his father.
Yeah, but he also hasn't really had a chance because he's only just graduated high school, so it's not like he's had a chance to really do anything to be a disappointment yet. I mean,
Yeah, but
it
when he
looks like
when he graduates from high school, Willem Dafoe is like, "So you made it. I've been proven wrong before." Like, that's a heavy line.
eh,
That's a father saying, "I can't believe you did the thing I never thought you could do." And it's
yeah,
high school.
yeah, and you can tell again that Peter is the son he would have wanted, and I think that's something we
One,
see played up more in the sequels as well, like the nature of that.
well,
He's resistant for it.
you know what? We'll see next week. I think they do carry it on in Spider-Man 2.
Not really, but we'll get to that later.
We'll have to check it out. We'll talk about that next week. So
Norman
anyway, where are we? Who's killing who?
Norman went after Thanksgiving, went back to his house, and this time he has the goblin mask like sitting on the edge of a chair, and it's like talking to him, and they're having this two-way conversation about. He's like, "Oh, you have to kill Spider-Man."
The heart, Osborn.
Oh, he says he can't just kill Peter Parker because he says I can't kill Peter. He's like, well, sure you can. You can kill. We're not trying to kill Peter. We're trying to kill Spider-Man. He's like, how do I do that? That's when he says the heart one. First, we attack his heart.
Well, then who do they go after first? Aunt May.
Yeah, and she's
Which I really appreciate. Like, the heart of Peter Parker is Aunt May.
And she's reciting the Lord's Prayer at the bed, and he blows up the side of the house and is in there on the glider, and he's demanding that she finish it. And she does deliver us from evil, and it just kind of cuts to Peter rushing to the hospital, and he's not sure what happened until he hears her say, those yellow eyes, those damn yellow eyes. And he realizes, oh shit, he knows who I am, and takes that in for a bit, and he sits down and waits for Aunt May to come to, but she's still lying there for a bit, and MJ comes to see how Aunt May is, and they have like this nice conversation.
You're out of order, but you're still good. So Aunt May gets attacked by the Green Goblin, and then she goes into the hospital and Peter, that's the shot. We get to see Peter run in, and Aunt May says, those eyes, those horrible yellow eyes. And so anyway.
Yeah, I said that part, yeah.
Yeah, I know. But then when Aunt May is in the hospital, Mary Jane comes to visit.
Yeah, I said that too, yeah.
Is that not the most cringy?
What?
Like, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst playing Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. That, I'm kind of Spider-Man's personal photographer. Oh, yeah? Has he said anything about me? Well, yeah, he did. He said he loved you, and he has boners. Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure he didn't say that, but okay.
I'm paraphrasing. And then I know you hate it when I paraphrase. And then they hold hands, and then Harry walks in. And it's just like, oh, it's not well acted. It's not well written. It's not, I don't even know how you direct that. Like, everything about that makes me feel like I'm sitting in pudding.
Well, you see, that's how I feel the most of Peter and MJ's interactions are in this movie. They're very cheesy and on the nose.
Okay.
And very, very comic book. It's funny because in that scene when they're talking, Aunt May is not asleep. She pretends to be, and she actually smirks at one point. Because she's waiting for him to just kind of say it, which is why after MJ and Harry leave, she's like, oh, come on, Harry, or come on, Peter, everybody knows. He's like, knows what? It's like, oh, come on, everybody knows about you and your thing for MJ. Why don't you just tell her already? and that's when he's like, you need to just take some time off and
Yeah.
go be with MJ. And then you have arguably one of the best transfers of something that felt like a trailer line that makes it into the movie, where she's like, you do too much. You're not Superman, you know. And that just felt so natural in the conversation they were having here, whereas a lot of other similar lines or shots from trailers that make the way in the movies just look weird, you know. But that one felt like like it's not like the burn baby burn thing for Batman Returns, which was just a trailer line that didn't really, which is like alluding to how much box office they thought that movie was going to make, which is why they put that in the trailer, but it doesn't really fit in the movie. Whereas here, her saying, you know, you're not Superman, you know, it's alluding to the things she's been worried about with him for the whole movie, which is he's changing, you're so busy, you're tired all the time, you're falling behind at school, you know, things are going on. So I like that delivery.
Again, in terms of allusions to DC properties, there is a point when he's designing his own suit. There is a point where he says utility belt, and then he crosses it out. And so there are sort of fun. I don't know. Spider-Man is a jokey guy, and I think the movie deserves the jokey tone when it's like, no utility belt, you're not Superman. But it was an excellent trailer moment.
Yeah, and I thought it worked really well in the movie itself. And it was when she starts talking about MJ again that Peter suddenly has like this light bulb go off. He's like, oh shit. So he runs outside and he gets on the payphone to try and call MJ, and she's not answering, and he's freaking out. And it turns out that the Goblin answers the phone when he calls the second time.
What does he say, Kat? You want to do it, you know.
Yeah.
Can the Spider-Man come out to play? Can you do it?
Oh, you mean?
Can you do a better Willem Dafoe impression?
Probably not. Can the Spider-Man come to play?
Oh, that was good. So you were saying?
Yeah. So Peter shows up as Spider-Man at the Brooklyn Bridge, and he's got MJ hostage in his left arm, and he's holding the torn cable of the Roosevelt Island cable car, and the other with a bunch of kids in it. And
he blows up the entire cable car facility. It's almost Moonraker.
Yeah, and so he's holding it there, and he's like, "Itsy bitsy spider, come along, a water spout." Along came the Goblin and took the spider out, and he mentions other things like, heroes always have to be prepared for when somebody comes along and makes them make a sadistic choice." And he's asked him, you know, who are you going to be? You're going to have to choose. Now choose. And he drops MJ and the kids.
This movie is so much about identity, it hurts. And it hurts in a good way. It makes my heart swell. And also, when I first saw this movie, I was like, you're ripping off Batman Forever. And it only took like a couple more times. And I was like, all right. So anyway, he rescues both. Why is the Roosevelt Island gondola carrying so many children at night?
I don't know. Maybe it's not that late at night. I don't know. I don't even know what's on Roosevelt Island.
What time of year is this?
I don't know.
Like they cover, like there's graduation, so it must be, I don't know when this is.
Like late summer into the fall now. They're not really clear on the time jumps, but
yeah,
he manages to
grab forward.
He grabs her with the webs and he grabs onto the cable and he tells her to climb down to the car. She's like, I can't, I'm too scared. He's like, you could do it, and trying to encourage her, but it's like, no, you better do it, bitch. Because otherwise all these kids are gonna die. And so
she's such a pussy.
Yeah, so he ends up dropping the thing down there, and the Goblin is about to take out Spider-Man when this ridiculously convenient comic book moment happens where a bunch of people happen to be walking across the bridge at this hour, and they all happen to be carrying all sorts of junk with them that they can just throw over the bridge at any time.
Hang on. No, there was a giant explosion And there's a tram that is hanging by a guy who had been flying around in a glider, and Spider-Man is there. So, like, no, there's a lot going on. It's not like, I think that people got out of their cars.
Right, but the idea that people just have all of this junk that they could just afford to throw, or they start throwing over the balcony.
I don't have a big car. I got a lot of junk.
It just felt a bit contrived. It's like, okay, all these people are here and they're doing the whole thing. Oh, you mess with Spider-Man or one of us, you mess with all of us, you mess with New York and that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, so they're throwing
So
a bunch of junk.
let's also remember that this movie, first things first, you mentioned right off the hop, this is a very comic book moment.
Yeah.
This is a comic book movie.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
You know what I mean.
Also,
comic book gets cheesy.
But I think it's in the spirit of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
This is one of, when we have sort of conversations about whether or not this is too dark.
Yeah.
Well, what about the ones that are too light?
Sometimes it could be that way, sure.
And I think this is one of those moments, but this is one, like, this is, I can understand if this is too goofy, jovial comic book. But when I'm watching a Spider-Man movie, goofy, jovial comic book is kind of what I'm going for. I want to see that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
He saves them, dropping them down onto a trawler, and the goblin swoops in and grabs Spider-Man and takes him to this abandoned building of some sort.
It's in the middle of nowhere in Gothic Transylvania.
Yeah, it's not believable that a building, a nice brick building like that, is going to be completely abandoned and hollowed out on the inside in this area of the city.
Now wait, like I recently watched. Apparently, there's this like island that no one lives on in between Manhattan and somewhere else. And like, no, there's like a crazy weird island that is basically just a garbage dump. So, and I found out. Well, no, I'm just saying, in terms of the realism of what we're talking about, from what I understand, New York City itself, in reality, has an island that no one lives on except for, oh no, don't live there.
Okay, anyway, like I was saying, they crash into this abandoned building that looks really nice on the outside, too nice to be abandoned. And
Spider-Man gets thrown through the wall.
Yeah, they get in a big fight, and at one point, Peter drags down a whole wall of bricks on the goblin, and it's at the end of this fight that he sees that it's actually Norman Osborn, which he didn't realize, because at no point in this movie did he ever wonder where. Like, the only time he ever asked what you like is when he and Harry, after the World Unity Festival, were talking about, what do you think that was? He's like, I don't know. But he never really thought to ask himself, with all these other encounters with the goblin he had, to try and investigate to figure out, well, what is this? Where does it come from? It's just like, oh, it's you again, kind of thing. And so now he's finally realized during this final battle that it is Norman Osborn, and he's absolutely shocked. It's like, you tried to kill Aunt May, you tried to kill Mary Jane, and he's like, oh, that was the goblin. I had nothing to do with it. Spare me. All this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when we see that he's secretly playing around with the controls for his glider on his wristband, while Peter is just kind of transfixed by the fact that this is actually Norman Osborn, who he looked up to and respected, which is something I've always had misgivings about, because I like the notion of this relationship between Peter and Norman that never really gets to go anywhere, because when Norman finds out that it's Peter, that seems to be more of a goblin reaction. Like, Norman doesn't seem to have any type of reaction to the fact that, oh, the guy I've been fighting is actually Peter. It's like, oh, okay, it's Peter, we gotta kill him.
Well, but I think that's what you get. I think that's what you get at the end.
Yeah,
I think that's the last plea.
Yeah, and it's like a half-assed plea because he's secretly trying to kill him with the glider while he's pleading with him and talking with him.
Well, do you
And
think that Norman and the Goblin are two separate personalities, or do you think that they're integrated?
I think they're more separated than they are united, but there can be some crossover. Like for instance,
I'd accept that.
Norman was clearly enraged when he found out he got fired. It probably didn't take much for the Goblin to convince him to go and attack the competition and kill these people who thought he would be so happy to find out that his entire legacy and life's work were being torn out from under him and sold to somebody else. And so I can see that there might be that might have been a bit of his own personal desire for vengeance combined with the Goblin obviously pushing him over to actually do it. But I just felt that maybe some more could, because this movie, again, just about all of Norman's scenes are only there for what's absolutely necessary to the plot. And I feel we could have gotten some more mileage out of his relationship with Peter, but because of the needs of the script, we don't get that. And so,
well,
you have this brief moment at the end between them.
May I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Sam Raimi directed the movie Drag Me to Hell.
Okay.
Do you think that it's a possibility that in terms of the storytelling and the direction and the way that the Spider-Man movie was shaped, was that maybe Norman Osborn, with his ingestion of the Goblin serum, could have been an allegory for alcoholism in terms of the blackouts?
Yeah.
Like, I'm really interested in what these stories are telling. We've been through so many Batman movies.
Well, I mean, it's alcoholism up to a point because, again, I get the alcoholism analogy if he's lashing out against people logically. Like, again, he's really pissed off with his company, the fellow board members he's worked with forever, showing no loyalty and just throwing them off the bus without any consultation, without any care, anything at all. But then there's no real reason for him to be trying to kill Aunt May and Spider-Man, all these people. He says, as Goblin, it just seems to be some random
I thought about that too, and I was like, what is his plan? What is the Green Goblin doing?
Well, because it goes back to when he kidnapped Spider-Man and he says, eventually everybody's going to hate you, so maybe you should just join me anyway. And it's like, well, join them in doing what? And it's like the Goblin is a Mr. Hyde type character who just wants to wreak havoc on everybody for the hell of it. But the things he had done up to that point made a lot more sense for your alcoholism allegory. And I get why Goblin may be upset with Spider-Man for raining on his parade during the World Unity Festival. But the rest of everything he's doing is like, even when he finds out that it's Peter, he doesn't have any misgivings about it. He just decides, I guess at first he tries to tell the Goblin we can't kill Peter, but then the Goblin wins that fight, suggesting that it's not just alcoholism at that point, or not just a parallel of that. But, that's why I feel it's a little bit of both.
Well, ultimately, when it comes to any addiction, I think that the allegory is when you lose control. Like, it may not be specific to alcoholism. Maybe it's whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But like that moment where Willem Dafoe is sitting there and being like, Peter, stop, please.
Yeah.
It's me. It's Norman.
Yeah.
And Peter's blown away. And it's like, you really? And it's insane.
That's again, I know obviously Spider-Man is not Batman and he's not known as a detective, but it seems to me that if I'm just becoming Spider-Man and I keep having these run-ins with some crazy, I'm inquisitive by nature. If I see some psycho riding a glider like this, attacking with all these futuristic weapons and shit, I'm going to be curious, especially when I know he's gunning for me. I'm going to want to find out who he is. I'm going to try and investigate that. Spider-Man.
Yeah, I understand that. But Kat, like, let's remember the context of the film. If you saw that helmet, would you think it was Willem Dafoe?
No, I didn't say he should have thought it was him. I wasn't advocating that. I just meant that at no point in the movie does it seem like Spider-Man ever try to figure out, like, who is this Goblin and where does he come from? And so when he's completely shocked, it's like, yeah, I can see why he's shocked, because on the one hand, because when you had that scene, it was Norman was figuring out during Thanksgiving that it was Peter, but Peter was worried that Norman might find out that he's Spider-Man. Peter did not realize he was Green Goblin yet, and that's why he's so blindsided. And I get that he's blindsided. He had no reason at that point to suspect Norman, because apparently the big deal of him getting kicked out of the company is kind of hush hush. Like there's not a if there were a bunch of headlines, I don't get the sense that we ever saw any, or that Peter ever saw any. And so
I saw all of them.
well, I mean, like, yeah, that's right. There was a headline, but I'm not sure if Peter
All
saw that
of
headline,
them.
or if Peter
What,
was aware
the quest?
or if that, or if Peter was aware of the glider situation. Because I get it. He's totally won over by the fact that it's, or totally weirded, shocked by the fact that it's, Norman. And so then finally,
Well, okay, first things first. Peter Parker is not, no, he is not a detective.
I know, I'm just
Like,
saying, with common sense, you would want to find that out at that point. It's not like you're going to keep going out as Spider-Man every night knowing there's a psycho on a glider who's going to try and kill you, and you're not remotely curious as to who it is or what the hell's going on. Or like
Spider-Man is a defensive hero. He is not a proactive hero.
Yeah.
He will, like, he'll stop crime, street level crime, purse snatchers, carjackers, bank robbers.
Right.
Like that's what Spidey does. He keeps your neighborhood friendly. And no, I don't think that Spider-Man doesn't go investigating things unless they are affecting his family, whether that be Aunt May, Mary Jane, even J. Jonah.
It does affect all of them at that point, but yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is that he is a reactionary hero. He doesn't have a network of cell phones. Spider-Man just goes and swings out for a while. If there's crime, he'll stop it. If there's not, he is swinging around New York City. Can't be a bad time. It's like going for a jog, but awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, Norman Osborn diddles with his power glove, gets killed. Peter brings the body.
No. He's talking to him, and he says, "You have to protect me from the Goblin." It was him. It was all me. And as Peter's kind of shocked by it, eventually he breaks character and he says, "Godspeed, Spider-Man." And that's when the Spidey sense finally kicks in, and Peter does this backflip to dodge the glider as it impales Norman, who kind of is like, "Oh," and some editing I would change in that instance. I would just have it.
I love that moment.
And so he's impaled by it, and as he's dying, he says, "Peter, don't tell Harry," which reverberates across the next two films in terms of the consequences of that. And so that's when Peter goes to take Norman home. And I found it surprising that Harry's first assumption was that Spider-Man must have killed his father, or that it can't be like Spider-Man could have stayed. I mean, I get his mask is all torn up, so he couldn't stay there to try and lie to Harry or anything. He could, so he had to leave. But I did find it surprising. I mean, maybe Harry is just a firm believer in everything the Daily Bugle says.
Well, the thing that I found fascinating this time watching was Norman says, "Don't tell Harry."
Yeah.
Peter takes off the goblin armor.
Yeah, probably throws it in the river
or something. And then does, like, for lack of a better term, swaddle, and returns the body to the Osborn estate.
Yeah.
There is no evidence that, except for everything that happens later. Like, at this moment, don't tell Harry. Okay, I'll get rid of your costume. I will wrap you in cloth, and I will return you to your home, and you will die as Norman Osborn.
Hmm.
That's it. And so there is no Green Goblin evidence from the first movie until, later.
Well, I mean, the injury would still be there, even though they don't show it.
Glider's gone. Like, there is no evidence. It's just Norman Osborn dead. What other evidence has there been that Norman Osborn did anything ever? Like,
Uh,
anything bad?
well, I didn't say there was, but I'm saying that there is the evidence that he got impaled by something two-pronged evenly spaced stick. So,
If I were J. Jonah Jameson, I'd blame Spider-Man.
uh, right, he would, but he hadn't seen it yet. But I'm asking. I thought it was odd that Harry, upon first seeing it, assumes that Spider-Man must have murdered his father. It can't be that he found it or anything. He just kind of assumes that, and that leads into a weird plot logic
Oh,
issue with the second film. But
well,
it is what it
no.
is.
Okay, hang on a second. Spider-Man is standing over my father's dead body. He returned the body. I don't even know what to think. I don't know
Right,
what to think. I would.
But we know exactly what Harry thought. He immediately says, "What have you done? What have you done?" And he reaches for the gun to try and shoot him, and he's already gone.
Was that
That
a
was Harry's
Walther
go-to.
PPK?
I don't know, but that was Harry's
It looked
go-to.
like it.
But that was Harry's go-to response to seeing, like, he didn't even question it. It's just like, oh, you must be. That has to be it. Never mind that there's no real reason why Spider-Man.
It's a comic book movie. We need
That's exactly. Yeah, do you see?
motivation.
See, that's exactly why I'm talking about. This movie has a lot of cheesy beats to it, and it
Spider-Man is
reverberates.
cheesy.
Well, some of the other ones don't feel as like they work better. This one just feels a bit too, again, on the nose with some of the stuff. Like
Well, I can't wait to show you.
Like, they want Harry to have a problem with Spider-Man in the future movies, so they come up with a kind of a lazy reason for it. Like, none of the characters apply logic or thought to any of these things.
I don't think that's fair because I think that they established the friendship between Peter and Harry so well that no, I think that this sets up so much, and I think it does it so well.
Yeah, I didn't buy into their friendship again, though. I didn't.
It might be primary
colored.
colored. This might be drawn in crayon, but I think it does it well to outline the characters for a movie audience based on 30 years of comic books.
Yeah. So about 40 years at that point. So from there we go to the funeral, and
Yes. Hooray!
Harry pledges that that Spider-Man's gonna pay. The last thing I do, Spider-Man will pay, and he walks away. And MJ, who showed up there, kind of talks to Peter, and she's like, in those moments where I thought I was gonna die, I thought I would be thinking of somebody else, but instead I was thinking about you, Peter Parker. I notice how every time she says his name, she says his first and his last name, which I thought was kind of a funny observation.
No, not at that moment, because she says, it was you, Pete. It's always, okay, so I love Mary Jane Watson, and Kirsten Dunst is a big part of that. I actually, Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane and John Romita have a lot to do with why I love Mary Jane Watson. And so, yeah.
Okay.
I think that Kirsten Dunst does a great job in the emotional response. You know who I wish had played Mary Jane? Alicia Witt.
I don't know who that is.
Great. Good story then. But
she kind of, it's clear that she and Harry are not an item anymore, obviously. And so
clearly.
She kisses Peter, and as he's walking away, she has that epiphany moment where she's like, "Oh, could it be?" And that's where he seeks into the narration, the voiceover narration about how he can't have
Okay,
relationships and things.
Cat.
What? What?
Segue.
Take long pauses. What were you saying?
No, when it's not pronounced Sieg, it's segue.
Whatever. I don't really care.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. It's whatever. Sieg, segue, tomato, whatever.
Okay.
And as it does that, God the fuck, what was I saying? Yeah, that's right. He siegs into that whole, narration about how, great power comes great responsibility, how he can't really have normal relationships if he's going to be Spider-Man and that kind of thing.
Right.
And, who am I? This is my gift, my curse. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man. And then you have that really sweet montage of him swinging through the cityscape.
Now, and you get two of them. You get a bunch of really sweet web swinging scenes in this movie. Do you think that you can recreate the excitement of the web swinging discovery that you have in this movie?
Like recreate it how?
Have you ever seen a better web swinging in a movie than the original Spider-Man?
I'd have to get back to you on that because it's been a while since I've seen the Andrew Garfield one to see what that was like.
All right. Good answer, because that had like a parkour first person thing going on. We're going to be watching all of these. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. But yeah.
So yeah, this movie, it's iconic. I get why it was a big deal. I really liked Rosemary Harris as and Cliff Robertson as Aunt May and Uncle Ben. J.K. Simmons was just a perfect casting. Again, Willem Dafoe's hampered a bit from the costume, but I felt that again. I wanted more from the Norman Harry or the Norman Peter relationship. I felt that was just something that Norman was only in the scenes that he absolutely needed to be in. I felt they could have done more with that character. Harry, I didn't really like him. I didn't buy into his friendship that much with Peter. It's kind of like they're the two students who are paired together for an assignment. It's like, okay. And then MJ, a lot of her lines and stuff are on point. Some of the cheesy stuff is there. Yeah, I get it. So it's a good movie. What would you give it for? What are we calling these? How many webs?
You know what? We are going to be giving all of the Spider-Man movies tigers.
What?
Tigers.
Why?
Mary Jane Watson's first panel was an introduction that said, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot."
Are you serious? We're going to call them tigers?
I am deadly serious.
All right. I guess that means you're going to die, because I'm certainly not going to die.
You're not going to... How many tigers would you give this movie?
Maybe 7 tigers. 7.5, around there.
Okay. I'm going to have to write this down. I forgot. Where's my pen? My pen! Yeah, I found
somewhere
it.
in Canada.
All right. So Kat gives...
I'll give it 7.5.
Spider-Man 2K2. 7.5 tigers.
You give it.
I'm giving it a 9.
Okay.
It's certainly a 9. Simply for the web crawling, or sorry, the wall crawling. That was exactly what I wanted to see when I saw a Spider-Man movie. The web swinging was exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see sort of a somewhat gawky guy be Peter Parker. I didn't want him to be like that good looking. Like good looking, but not that good looking. And Tobey Maguire, sorry about your luck. But no, this movie was exactly what it met my expectations. So I was so very, very happy. So I'll give it a 9. I don't even think I have a 10.
Well, we'll discuss that later when we get to that. So
We must. We must. So is there
we
anything else? Like, what do you would like? Do you have anything you want to talk about?
the chat.
Oh shit. I can't. You're not. You can't do it right now. Where did I leave off? Oh, here we are.
We were at the very end of the show and forgot about the chat. Yeah,
No, but we love the chat.
I know. But it sounded like you were forgetting. You sounded surprised when I mentioned the chat, like you forgot that we have to get to the chat.
Cat. I
Yeah.
forgot. All
Okay,
right.
so DVB says, for real? That was Macho Man?
Yeah, for real. Oh, Jill was here. Hey, Kat,
Yep.
have you ever seen Spartacus?
Yes, why?
I just saw it for the last time yesterday, or for the first time yesterday.
Okay.
Jill is her name is Spartacus right now. And she's doing a review. She's doing a review on Friday of Spartacus.
Okay.
So did you like it?
Yeah. It's sure. Yeah, I have a 4K. I assume you're talking about the movie version with Kirk Douglas, right?
Of course. The Kubrick?
Yes, I have the 4K Steelbook back.
How does it look on the 4K? I'm scrolling through the chat.
It's it looks great. I like that they retain the original look like a lot of those older films do. Like they don't like wash it out or anything. You still have a lot of the film grain there, which is good. Kind of like, again, goes back to the old thing where you see a movie that you used to watch it on a small tube TV and it looked fine because it was 480, but it was a tube TV, so it didn't matter. And now when you watch it on a big 4K TV, it's smoothed out, but it still looks the same as it did, but it's still great. The only one which I felt was a radical difference was Apocalypse Now 4K. If you didn't know any better, that came out in 2019. And if you didn't know any better, you would have thought it was shot within the last 10 years. That's how great that 4K transfer looked. But that's very rare to see that. But yes.
Wow.
Yes. I was hoping that last year with the release of No Way Home on Blu-ray that they would have put out like a steelbook set or something of these other 5 Spider-Man films, and like a box set or something. I would have loved to have that because I haven't upgraded my DVDs, so. But,
well, like going into this, which is your favorite Spider-Man?
I'll tell the chat that when we get to it.
Oh, did they have a question? Heavens.
Oh no, I meant if you want me to tell them going into this review series, you mean?
Yeah.
Probably Spider-Man 2.
No, but no, not which Spider-Man movie. Which actor who played Spider-Man? Remember when we were doing remember the berries when we were talking about?
I think it goes back to what it goes back to what I mentioned before. Tobey Maguire is the best Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man, and Tom Holland's good at both. But not like as great as those other two. So it varies. So
You know what my biggest problem with Spider-Man 1 is?
What?
You know whenever Spider-Man talks and his mask doesn't move?
Yeah.
It bothers me.
That's true. You should see his jaw like move a little bit inside the mask if he's talking. And
I'm not sure because there are moments when you see Willem Dafoe in the helmet and you can see his mouth.
You can see
and it's actually going.
That's the biggest difference on the HD transfer from the DVD transfers. That you can easily see Willem Dafoe's mouth all the time, and it looks really weird. Because it's like, wait, I can see his face in there, and then you have the mask on top of it. They can just kind of a little off.
Well, I would love and I've always been able to see it, and because I'm a god, but I would, if that is something in terms of the brightness, I should turn up the brightness Instead of getting a 4K player, I should just turn up my brightness.
Oh no, because you don't want it that. Then you'd have to constantly readjust it for when you get to dark scenes.
I did have to readjust my television recently, so thank you. I appreciate that. Don't forget, if you change your settings, change them back.
Let's get back to the chat.
Where did I star?
You found one for Edge of Time, I believe, and you had it on there for a second, then you took it off when we started talking.
Oh, here it is.
There we go.
I never bought the comic book version of The Harry Friendship. The art made me nervous, telegraphing that nothing good will come of it. Yeah. Harry Osborn he's a freaky looking pointy person. So. And then I just wanted to showcase some emojis.
Sometimes I wonder what the adults watch.
But if you want to say this movie is cheesy, yes. But it's good cheese. Macaroni and cheese. Yeah. The voice of Spidey has never sounded correct, especially with the lack of internal monologue. Spider-Man is more of a loner ever comes across in the movies. I get that. And I would say the best Spider-Man voice is Paul Soules from is it this one? It's this one. It's this guy. This is the best. This is the best representation of Spider-Man in the history of ever. So, if you like, sorry,
what is that?
This is the Spider-Man 1967 television series made by Filmation. It is in color. And the voice of Spider-Man is Paul Soules, Canadian. But yeah, so that is, if you are a fan of Spider-Man and you want to show it young or old, that's it. This is the guy. This is the guy. Anyway. Kat, have you ever seen Speed Racer?
No.
Really?
As long as there's no brie.
I don't know. Are you lactose intolerant?
No.
Oh my God. What is this? Jill says a parent's love is supposed to be unconditional. So his dad is a jerk. Obviously, it makes for a great foundation for a villain. Yeah. Well, and also I think that you're discussing the relationship between Harry and Pete. And Peter.
Well, Norman being the jerk father and
favoring not his son.
Yeah.
That's emotionally scarring.
Yeah.
Epione, still talking Spider-Man. I know. You know, Kat started yawning very, very early.
Yeah, can you get through this here? Can you get to the next one?
I'm going there. You read this one then.
Okay, I'm trying to read it. I'm really small. Okay, Jill says, answer, I enjoy Spider-Man similar to the first few episodes of Lost in Space. It understands the genre, even if some of it doesn't make logical sense. It's at least fun to talk about it as a result. Yes, it is.
Wait. Oh, in terms of...
I mean, in terms of what Jill said. Did you agree with Jill's sentence?
No, I disagree. The first few episodes of Lost in Space understands the genre of Lost in Space. Like, I think Spider-Man is sort of a genre-defying superhero.
No, she's talking about this movie in particular. She says, I enjoy Spider-Man 2002, similar to the first few episodes of Lost in Space, because it understands the genre, even if some of it doesn't make logical sense. It's at least fun to talk about.
Yeah, I guess. And
It's
I
been a
mean,
long time
like,
since I've
well,
seen Lost in Space, so I can't speak to that.
and I am not. I've seen Lost in Space. It has been a long time, but I'm just not. Yeah, if you are a fan of Lost in Space, or would like to learn more about Lost in Space, there's a YouTube channel called Pop Culture Curator, and he does reviews of Lost in Space every Monday. So I'm not a Lost in Space fan.
All right.
I think we're good.
That's no other comments.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Yes, I mean, I love in regards to Spider-Man the whole lore of it and the character, the video game stuff. I'm gonna have a lot more to say for Spider-Man 2 next week for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be hopefully funner. I'm still what's been barking for the last couple hours.
Oh, well, once again, Kat, we've done well. Hang on a second.
No arbitrary
So
pauses. Just tell. Okay.
no, I always arbitrarily pause. Don't yell at my style.
It is, but when you feel like your foot's been crushed with a sledgehammer and is stinging to high heaven, you kind of want to speed things up.
Okay, then next Thursday, what day is that? That's going to be the 70th anniversary of Casino Royale.
That'll be after our Spider-Man review. So we're gonna do Spider-Man 2 next Thursday, or next Wednesday on April 12th, and then we're gonna do the Casino Royale review on April 13th. And you can set the time so that it doesn't or actually, as long as it's not in the morning, because I have a post-op appointment in the morning.
Okay. Well, it sounds like it's an emergency. We have to get out of here. Aunt May is broken. I was going to say that our closing should be.
So we can see the.
Oh, you want me to do this?
Yeah, so we can see the logo again and all of our mentions. Yes, you can find this on Fantasmagorium show on YouTube and Facebook.
You good?
Yeah.
You done?
Yeah.
Tally ho.